to Michael's Roundtable Talk, this episode of our series on magic and changes in humanity and changes in a lot of things. We'll be continuing this time with Len Histon. He is the creator of a very special game. And before we get into that, I would like to introduce Brian on the other end. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Michael. How are you? Hi, Len.
And we have Len Histon in the studio. Let's see. Len, your microphone is on.
Yeah. Hi, Mike. Hi, Brian.
Give me one more time.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Brian.
Okay. And I'd like to ask the listeners if they want to call in, ask questions or anything, to use the chat line or call in directly on the switchboard. You can just click on the Skype button if you're listening online while we're talking, and that will connect you automatically. If you follow the directions, you'll get on your board. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the game today, the Wizzdom Game. The Wizzdom Game is not like other games. It's a game that really never ends, I would say. It's a game that can be played short time, over long time, in many different levels. And what it does basically is that it attunes you to the sensory abilities you have that you probably didn't know you had before you played the game. So a lot of people think that playing games is a waste of time. Why would we want to talk about a game as a solution to problems in life? Isn't that a waste of time? Well, let's see what Len has to say about that.
Well, I think people may not accept it and may not realize it, but in essence, we're actually playing a game already. And with all the challenges we get in life, and I've found that if you take the challenges that you get in life, you take them seriously, and you see them as problems, and they have a tendency to want to build up until people are suffering fairly high levels of stress and depression, etc., etc. Whereas if they were to appreciate that in essence life really is a game, and you were to develop the abilities to help you deal with these challenges when they come along, then the quality of life is going to be significantly enhanced. So this game shows that life really is a game, and you have a bit of fun, and you have a certain attitude when you do things, and things just work out better.
So this game is something you can't buy in the store, can you?
No, not as yet. Probably won't end up going through stores. I'm moving around the world at the moment, training up people to be guides, so anyone who wants to buy the game, they can either buy it online or buy it from a Wizzdom guide.
Wait a minute, buy it online. You must have an address for that, right?
Yes, it's www.thewizdomclub, that's with two Zs, thewizdomclub.com, and yes, you can buy the hard copy version of it. That's at the moment, I think it's on for 119 Australian dollars, and that's around €100. But then there's a $37 version that people can buy, and that's a PDF version. And soon, I'm hoping in the next 2 weeks, we'll have our app ready for people to download. And they can download that for as little as around $10. Just needs to be confirmed a little bit. That means that every family, every school, every person now has an opportunity to discover who they really are, their abilities, through simple play, and it's going to cost next to nothing.
But let's also make this even bigger. I've heard from you that you have not only plans, but you've also modified this game so it can be played with couples, especially that like each other, and it can be played as an outdoor thing, an indoor thing, and you've got a lot of things going on to add to this.
Building, yeah. In essence, the original 32 games were I put together for me to create a better connection with my own children, and as it turned out, that what we'll call magic, and it wasn't magic. I now know what it was, but at the time I thought it was magic. Happened in the relationship between my children and I, and then. I've used this particular set of 32 games in hundreds of different situations, from working with Indigenous people, corporate training, schools, universities, institutions, but now we're finding that there's another. One of the things that actually happened when I was doing a workshop once, this lady, one of the guys bought a game and he took it home and played it with his wife, and she saw me a few weeks later and she said, "Len, you've got to put a warning on that game of yours." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well," I said, "What warning?" And she said, "This game leads to sex." I thought, what? How does this lead to sex? So anyway, I tried playing it myself with a few ladies, and yeah, it does. Well, no, only in the fact that the game itself, when you look at each, like the sort of random selection of the games on the 32 games, you think, now how are the two of us going to play this? And then you think, well, okay, work it out. Come up with a creative way for the two of you to play it. And when you start to get to that level of intimacy, something really amazing happens. However, we are also going to have a specific couples game. But then again, there will also be a 32 games for dinner parties, for children's birthday parties, for outdoor picnics.
This is so cool.
Traveling games.
And the game itself, just so everyone knows, is based on a spinner. It's like a spinning bottle. It could have been an arrow or anything, but it's a spinner that is either physical or electronic, and then it points to a number along a dial, and that would be pointing to a person, one of the players, or it would be pointing to a number of the game, because you don't know what you're going to be doing as you're playing the game until you spin the dial, right?
Well, it's just to clarify that just a little bit. You spin first to choose a person to be it, who is like the boss of the next activity, who has a say over if there's any decisions to be made, and then that person spins to select the number, and then you refer to the games book, and whatever is the game that number represents, that's the game that you play.
And you also have some very specific rules for all of these games, don't you, man? A framework.
In essence, magic happens when you play this game. I say in essence because it's not magic. But it only happens when there is a safe environment. And if you don't follow the rules, then you don't have the safe environment, and you may as well not bother playing it, because it will end up being just like another game. The rules are really quite simple, and it's like if someone speaks, everyone listens. We all have a fundamental need to be heard. And it's a mutual respect when you're listening to each other. Another one is there's no put-downs or teasing, even in fun, and that's even to yourself. And that's because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between fun and real. So even if you make some fun of somebody and everybody has a laugh, I will guarantee you the recipient of the fun will go home, or the target will go home and will just in the back of the mind be thinking about what was being said. So don't do it.
I can confirm that is true.
Yeah, and then there's one of the things, there's no running in the games, because with some of the activities you find, most of them are just sitting around at a table, but sometimes you're actually moving around, and there's no running, you don't do anything you don't want to do, and you look after each other's safety all the time. Those simple rules create the safe environment, and you just have fun together.
And I think there's a couple of things that needs to be said, because, Len, you're so close to this, you don't recognize that people haven't got a clue. But a lot of these games are actually played with your eyes blindfolded.
One of the, there is a reasonable number, I suppose, of the 32. There's probably 8 or 9 that you've got a blindfold on, and 4 or 5 of them you are actually moving around. It's funny when Mike picked me up from the train station when we arrived when we're driving here. We're talking about people put on a blindfold so that they can see.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. We've got these amazing abilities as human beings, but because we don't get an opportunity through our normal lifetime to develop them, they just remain dormant. And by putting on a blindfold and having some fun in a safe environment, these abilities are just naturally switched on. And we find our ability to think clearly, to interact with others, to deal with problem situations is significantly enhanced when we're more aware of our inner abilities.
And this also supports the film The Matrix, when he's blinded in the last series of the movies. That's only then that he can see. And also, what other movie am I thinking of? There's several other. Yes, Melchizedek on the internet has brought forth a number of children, teenagers as a rule, on YouTube videos. They are super psychically gifted, he claims, and with a blindfold on, blind people have been taught to read through their fingers, that they can see color through other senses. It's a cross-sensory channel of information that we haven't really discovered yet.
There's a lady called Helen, I think it's Ellen Ayakawa, I think her name is, from Canada, that's actually specifically starting to work with children with those skills. Essentially, with the game, it's just about basic awakening basic abilities and having fun. And this is aimed for every person to experience. And my passion is because I have the passion with this game because I saw what it did to my children, and I saw what it did to children in classrooms, and then working with Indigenous and people in universities. And I know that every person that plays this game in a safe environment will have the opportunity to have some significant improvements in their quality of life. And it's very, very simple.
Len, if you gentlemen don't mind if I interject right now, let me give you something. Before the show, we were talking about an event that occurred here, and that one person who had their eyes physically removed. Now, what she went through 6 months after that was something that I and that both myself and her primary physician found fascinating. And no one could identify it, not the psychiatrists, no one. I went pouring through things to see if someone had experienced this before. She began to see, but in a completely different way. And she began to see events that were occurring everywhere, but she also could see the room and see me at times and what I was doing.
It's called blind sight, Brian. It's a scientific fact.
And they term it Charles Bonnet syndrome, which was, I think, first observed by a Swiss philosopher when his grandfather had been sighted all of his life until the age of 65, went blind. And when that happened, she tapped into all kinds of things. And I recorded them and supported her. Her primary care physician did. He knew something was happening, but didn't know what. And it was amazing to see the psychiatric aspect just shut it down.
Len, you're saying that blind sight, what you call blind sight, is scientifically proven. Could you say something more around that?
You just have to Google it. I don't have the exact facts who did the study, but if you Google blind sight, you'll see there's information on it. How would you describe what blind sight really is? For me, and my first experience with it, and many people who first started it, and I found most of this out by accident. Not by accident. We were playing it in the early days, and I saw people doing things, and I asked them what they were doing and how they were doing it, and then we tried it out ourselves. And some of them didn't even know that they were doing it, but they explained what they were doing at that particular time. We tried it, and we had these experiences. And when I started, I would put my back to a wall, my palms to a wall. If I was blind man's bluff, for example, when I'd caught most of the people and I had a few left to catch, I would put my back to the wall and I would ask, in essence, I'm asking my inner child, where are they? And then I wait for an answer. And what I mostly got was like a negative image. You're looking at a photograph, and you can see, but it's kind of like all black, but you see the white bit. And I found it every single time, if I'm just of pure intent, I go there, and they are in that spot every single time. A few times I've had heat on my face to tell where people were, and I followed that, and it was there. We had some remarkable events in Los Angeles with a young man, and he claimed that he had tingling in his fingers, and from that he got the image as to where things were, and he was accurate 100% in every challenge we could possibly give him. So I think different people get it in different ways.
And what I've seen on the films from Melchizedek is that this girl can read the paper with her feet.
With her feet?
She can read the paper with her feet. There are children, I wrote about this in a book I wrote in 2007. There are super psychic children in China. I think there are 200,000 registered at that time that could take pills out of a pill glass. The pill glass was sealed. It was behind glass sealed walls, and they could put something else in the pill glass instead. Apparently, 50,000 children have been registered with these abilities in Mexico, and these things have been loosely reported about on the internet for the last 10 years or so, and mostly in connection with what they call wanderers or star children, rainbow children. There are lots of different names. But there are humans that are extraordinarily gifted in ways that are not in the range of what we call normal. And we're beginning to understand with your game, it's becoming quite apparent that it's not that they have exceptional abilities, perhaps, but maybe they're latent in us all.
They're what?
They're latent in us all.
They are 100%. If you could help me just keep things in perspective with this, having these abilities is an absolutely wonderful thing. But one thing we've found that when playing these games, that every one of these abilities has a very practical application or transference in real life. Every single one of them.
So you're not wasting time when you're playing these games.
Well, far from it. But and also want to stress that these abilities emerge gradually when you're playing and the safe environment is established and you're going through all a different range of activities. And once you allow these activities to ignite within you, when these activities begin to synergize and to enhance each other, that's when the magic or the intuitive stuff begins to happen. And it doesn't happen immediately. Rarely. It does like 1 in 100 times.
Well, we tried playing today. Let's admit this publicly. The four of us in this room have played three of us in this room right now have played.
Yeah, we've played all of us.
Yeah. Well, yeah. With Len, of course. And the thing that's interesting to say here on this, because in any game you have sort of frameworks and people are going to try and think, what are these people talking about, what this game is? You spin the wheel a couple of times and look up in a pamphlet what kind of game you're going to play, and you figure it out and you do it. And how long does it last? It really is something that's, you put a half an hour or maybe 3/4 of an hour to the side, and you can play as long as you want past that. And you can say, well, let's stop right here, take a break, we'll have to eat dinner or something. And you can continue on in days, weeks, months, or years. Really,
Absolutely.
it just goes by itself.
Yeah, no start, no finish. Just do it as long as you want to do it.
That's the difference about there's no board, but you do need a playing field in a way.
With this particular, you can basically you can adapt the environment. You can adapt the type of play each game to suit the environment that you're in. So if you don't have a great deal of room to move around, find a way to do it, and you can. But ideally, if you had a space the size of a reasonable lounge room, or like in Australia we have back patios, and I don't know if you have them here. And obviously you wouldn't be playing in the cold.
Would be playing out in the yard.
Yeah,
if it was summer.
But even the room the size of the studio here is excellent. If you took the table out and had a bit of space, you could still play it, and it's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you really don't need much more than a room. You need maybe some writing material and paper and blindfolds for all the participants that are playing, right?
Well, blindfolds, they can be just strips of cloth, as long as they can be fitted so that you can't see underneath the cracks in the eyes, because the kids will do that.
You've made special blindfolds. We've experienced those today. Those were interesting.
Yes, well, they're puffy, and the reason that they're puffy is that when I started playing this game, I was very proud at how well my children were doing. They would put blindfolds on, and they would catch people remarkably quick, and every activity they were so good. And I was raving about my children all the time, and finally my daughter said, "Dad, we can see." I said, "What do you mean?" They said, "Well, we just tilt the blindfold a little bit, put our head back a fraction, and we can see their feet." And I thought, you little shits. And so what I decided to do was make them puffy, right, so that they couldn't see. And
so
what was amazing...
These look just like the kind of blindfolds you get on an airliner, right?
Originally.
And what someone has done is they've taken the form and put in some puffy stuff, foam rubber or something very, very soft, and made like a pillow for the eyes. And it does work very nice. And you're probably going to make those as a prop, I suppose.
Eventually, but the point I'm making here is that when I made them puffy and they couldn't do it, they could still do exactly as well. They were showing me what they could do. And that was the very first time that I realized that began to realize that we have these abilities. And the kids just got better and better and better. We would play blind man's bluff, and if I just move my lips out, they get me.
Yeah, but it was obvious today that you have been training.
Well,
Len is good.
It wasn't funny.
No.
He just knew.
Well, we do just know. You know, it's like all of these senses are just turned off, and they're dormant in all of us. But I have to tell you that when I can sense, like I was chasing Mike, he moved to the left, I moved to the left. I knew where he was going, what he was doing. When you can do that, it feels amazing. It's something else happens inside. And that's why I'll play this game anytime, especially at the intuitive level, because I get a buzz out of doing it.
And you can imagine what it feels like to feel there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and this guy's got a blindfold on, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you show me a video of two ladies.
Yes.
And I didn't believe. I couldn't believe it, but I saw it. They were blindfolded, and they were chasing cat and mouse.
Cat and mouse.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't running.
By the way, it's Ken talking, it was just like they were.
You can actually go into the facebook.com, the Wizzdom Game, and down the bottom of the page, it's one of the old entries, are those two girls. You can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You posted it, but there was another amazing thing, because in earlier times I've been training on this, but I wasn't that successful today. Because I haven't been practicing.
What weren't
because
you?
The other guy playing with us. It's okay, I mentioned your name, Tanya. He was quite good, and he used other senses. So
everybody uses different strategies.
Yeah, you never know. Brian, have you played this game?
Well, not Len or not the game, but I know what he's speaking of, and I wanted to ask him a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Do you think that this game is? Should it be phrased that it's actually waking up latent senses, or it's actually changing the entire sense of perception, in that it's quieting the useless parts of the mind, which are the run-on voice, the ego, the self-importance, and all of that, quieting that and allowing the real aspects of what we are to come through. Is that a close assessment, or?
Well, Brian, I've never been asked that question, but I'd say that's absolutely spot on, because it actually proves if you get your ego out of the way, you get your thinking mind out of the way, and you create your intent and you just do, you can do things far, far better. So yes, it's exactly as you've just said it, Brian.
Yeah, you have to be aware. You have to be aware of your senses.
Well, that you're given your senses when you get what separates you out of the way, and if these exercises can do that, then you're looking at something that's more than just amazing. It's a gift. I mean, it's because everything in this life is geared for people to go against exactly what this would allow them to do, whereas it would take discipline and observation before to do that, because you have the bombardment of the outside world. And if you're putting them in a safe environment, and then you're quelling those aspects that are the most destructive aspects of humanity, in essence, and I'll just say it plainly because that's what it is. If you're quelling them in a safe environment, then you are, in essence, giving them the doorway to give them back to themselves.
Can I extend on that, Brian, because that's really excellent.
Absolutely.
Can I just extend on that and try and just bring it down? I'd like to stay where you're at. But can you imagine going into a classroom and introducing kids to their abilities on how to stay calm when under pressure, how to not be emotionally attached, to have to get things right all the time, and just get in and engage in the process and have fun and open and learn. And these simple abilities start to awaken within the child. I mean, I believe that we actually have them at birth, but the little process that we go through in the early years, they kind of get dampened down or quietened down or suppressed, whatever you would not want to call it. And you get in the classroom, and almost consistently, even at a very base level in the beginning, the standard of the quality of education increases, because eventually the child takes responsibility for their own education, because they're starting to want to learn. The role changes for the teacher. They become the facilitator of the process. Bullying almost is non-existent afterwards, and I think it's quite possible that it could be completely removed. And you create a very, very safe environment for these children to learn, and things change amazingly. So as an adult, yes, we can go through, we can understand that we get in touch with our intuition, and we can become much calmer and clearer. But at every level, in every way, this is helping humanity. So this is why I want to get to every single person to please have a look at this, or at least get to understand what your basic abilities are and which ones you're using and which ones you're not. And if you're not using, if you have not yet learned how to remain calm when lots of things are happening at the same time, then you need to go through the process to learn it. If you do not yet understand what a feeling is telling you, because that's your higher self talking to you, then you need to learn it. If you cannot set yourself an agenda or a goal on something, and you cannot detach, if you have not yet developed the ability to define what it is that you want, and then move towards it without pushing and fighting, then you need to learn it. And there are only 3 of the things you learn from playing the game.
You also need to learn that making mistakes is a primary prerequisite for learning.
Exactly.
And learning mistakes needs to be made okay.
Yes, exactly.
But we played this stress test today. I don't remember the number of it, but it was amazing. It really was amazing how relaxed we were, and it was really stressful.
To start with?
Yeah, to start with. And I thought, oh my God, how are we going to do this? But it went fine, and
They always do. We didn't get to do the chalk and cheese. That is the most easiest way to learn how to stay calm
because
under pressure.
we know we have to.
Yeah.
You have to come back,
And
I think what we discovered, the ones of us that have played this for the first time, is that for the first thing, you look back at the strategies you use because you're stretching yourself beyond what is normal. You're doing something you're not used to. And okay, you've got to use your senses in another way, and especially if you have a blindfold on, you have to think in a different way, and you notice how your state changes. You become very sensitive to, let's say, if you're looking for something in a room, and you find it, but you're not supposed to disclose that you have found it. That is not so easy when you have someone observing you all the time with the eye of a hawk and training that Len Histon has. Because when you find something that you've been given a task for looking for, at the moment you find it, you get relief, instant relief, and that does something to your body. You cannot hide that. Not all of it, because your chicken brain can only have 7 channels out, and there are so many more available,
And you can develop a lot of tactics. How to, you can watch the others, and then you see when they find it. If you can't find it yourself.
This would be a game that poker players would like to master.
Well, I took a break for the game for 10 years. I put it on a shelf.
How many years have you been playing it, Len?
I've been playing it in all 21 years, but I was going to do a project with 3,000 Indigenous people, Aboriginals in Australia, and it took a long time to get the trust of all the elders and the community, and I was about to begin the program, and it was 10 years of hard work to get to that level.
Len is from Perth, Australia, just so that's noted. You can probably hear that.
Yeah, the accent probably gives it away a bit.
I think so.
Anyway, I had some people who had a need to have control over the situation, and I found myself in a position where I had to walk away from the project. Nothing to do with the Indigenous people. It was the interference of other people who needed to have control, and I was very hurt by that, and I decided to put the game on the shelf. And it was only 18 months or less than that. A friend came to me and he said, "Len, you can't do this. You can't leave it sitting on the shelf." But in that time, when I was doing nothing, one of the things I wanted to do, and I just, out of interest and curiosity, I wanted to see if I could use those abilities in playing poker. So I went into small poker tournaments, and I won a lot. And it's amazing.
Don't tell anymore.
It's amazing when you consider the table and just be present. And when you're just present, you can take in all the information that's happening at the table, right? And
I'm going to play bingo.
Yeah. No, you can. You just take in the information, and people say, "How did you know that? How could you possibly know?" And I just know. I know that what they had. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know specifically. And it was a lot of fun. Until I realised that it's really not appropriate to do this sort of thing and play poker, so I stopped. But it was fun while I did it.
You know what happens from my experience, if you should use your higher abilities in an inappropriate way, you get something called a bad conscience.
Yes.
And when you get a bad conscience, your inner child runs away, just like it's throwing a golf ball through the picture window in the front yard, and you ask, "Where's the kid?" And the kid is nowhere to be found. And this is a state of inner fragmentation that happens when a soul or if there's a bad conscience.
I think that's a very important point you made, Mike, because it's true.
Yes.
A friend of mine wanted to test me back in the late 90s. So we went into a casino, something I don't do because the nature of it is just simply not appealing. And after pulling about a 66% on roulette for about, a dozen, I walked away. I said, I can't do this. I'm sorry. And I was lauded. And then I said, all right, do you want a slot machine? And he said, yeah. And I managed to say, okay, this one over here. And it was against the back wall, and he put in a few quarters and $75 back. I said, now you have what you need. Buy. And I've never walked back in, and I won't acknowledge it to anybody, and I've acknowledged it here for the first time since then, because it's not something you wanted to. It just did defragment you exactly the way you said it. It left you with an unsettling feeling that this is not what it's about. Pull your head out of your ass, literally, was the thoughts I had.
The funny thing is, I actually met some good people at poker. But you're right, it does.
Yeah. But when we brought up the question of having a bad conscience, I would like to spend a couple of minutes on it. It's relevant to the game in a way, and it's relevant to all the things we've been talking about up through this series, Brian. And I know there are a lot of people that are suffering very much from a bad conscience, and they're wondering, okay, I did some crap in the past. What do I do to get rid of that? And there are a number of answers to those, and I think they're very important. I'd like to get a touch base on a little bit of those parts. In Hawaii, they have the same understanding in the kahuna knowledge, or huna theory, or huna knowledge, I would say, that the inner child runs away from higher self if there's a bad conscience. So they were always very big on how to get back on the path. And you had to give back so it hurts. If the person was dead, you gave something to the family. If the person was alive, you went to that person and you asked forgiveness. Now, this is what the Alcoholics Anonymous groups does. They go up and they ask forgiveness, and they also have to learn to forgive themselves. And this is so true. And I found that when doing hypnotic regression work up through the years, that when people go back into a past life experience and they find they've participated in something that has brought something else into their life, in this life, that there's a chain of events, and they find the link is that they have not been giving forgiveness to themselves or another person. And in doing so, you break that chain of cause and effect. And really, the soul, it seems like the creative force or higher self says, what's important here is the learning process. And if you have learned from those mistakes you've made, even though it could be, let's say, you've participated in slaughter, in war, and you figured it out, and you say, my God, what have I done? And you'd probably spend the rest of your life as an anti-war participant and really standing up, this stuff has got to go. And that's how you get rid of your bad consciousness. You stand up for the opposite, and you tell other people, no, you don't want to do that. And that really helps. And the universe brings that along and says, okay, then you get back into the flow of your own energy. It's wonderful to do. Forgiveness is important.
It's the most crucial.
When we were playing today, I felt some kind of energy in the room. It's some kind of soft and warm and good energy when you're playing this game.
When you get that safe environment, yes, it is. Yeah.
I think that energy is in any living room where you have two or more people gathered together, where there's a safe environment, where you can be real.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all defenses, all what you would term defenses, are down because they're meaningless. You always say, Mike, confusion is good for business. Well, there's your manifestation of confusion in the individual are those defenses, and that's good for business in something like this kind of game. I find it fascinating, Len, that corporations are actually engaging you with this, because ultimately what it opens is from what you've said looks like they can morph, or they can begin a metamorphosis into something more and better than they were. Is that what you're seeing?
I've just finished 11 days in Budapest, and in Budapest it was strictly a focus on corporate training, and we have now some wonderful opportunities that are emerging in Budapest, and I think you'll find that it won't be long before the Wizzdom process is introduced into many businesses throughout Europe, and that will be as a result of what actually happened in Budapest. In Germany, it's education. I was in Germany a few weeks ago. I played in 15, maybe 20 classrooms in that time. I was constantly moved from school to school, classroom to classroom playing. And now I have a large number of teachers that want me to go back, and the week after next I'm doing a training program in Germany, so with the game. So, but I wonder if it's possible to talk about a little bit about higher intelligence that emerges. That's what it actually emerges, and like there's 3 levels of the game when we like workshops, for example, and the first one is understanding what this actually is. Understanding what the abilities are and how they apply to our daily lives. The second one on the workshops, you can see it on the website, is applying it, and that is applying these abilities to your daily life to enhance the quality of life, to reduce your stress, to improve the level of interaction between you and your family, or in the classroom and the workplace. And the third one is actually being it. And I'll give you an example as to what I mean by being it. My son, when he was 7, I realized that he was my teacher. And he taught me, when I first started the game, it was because of marriage breakdown, and I was very frustrated in my relationship with my children, frustrated in the lack of quality with the relationship with my children. Because I was always busy just trying to make the money. And I found that I only had a superficial relationship with my children after the marriage broke down. And I was trying to find ways to connect with them. And I couldn't.
Can I stop you there for a moment, Len? Because I think you've touched on something important, that I was just busy making money. And I think a lot of men in this world today have lived much of their lives thinking that they're providing love at the highest possible factor because they are earning money, working, slaving, providing for the wife and children and whatever. It's a classical thing.
Am I allowed to swear on here?
Go ahead.
Well, in honesty, that and yes, I agree, and that's all bullshit.
I know.
Right? Because, you're not forming an effective relationship with your children. If you're out there working and doing those long hours, so thanks for bringing that up, Brian, because I learned a big lesson from this. When the marriage broke up, and I'm trying to get the better relationship with my children, I just wanted them to listen to me. As a failed father, I wanted to show them some things that maybe they could learn about in life. And when I started to play the game, the most amazing thing that I discovered was it wasn't them having to listen to me, it was me having to listen to them. And when I learned to listen to them, that is when they began to feel like I loved them.
Maybe your wife would have felt the same thing.
Well, quite possibly. If we can get there.
Oh, you opened a can of worms there, Mike.
But I did with my children.
Yes.
And that relationship that we formed then, now 21, 22 years later, is still there. It is just a natural, open relationship, and I'm so grateful for the game to help me learn to listen. But now we're talking about higher intelligence.
And I can testify because I've heard some of the conversations between you and your children, and it is very wonderful and open.
Yes.
Most people would envy that.
Yeah. This higher intelligence, and just an example. My son Russell, when he was 7, I would find, and I just learned through the game. I was just learning naturally. And I'd see him do something that I wasn't happy with him doing. Or it even upset me and it frustrated me that he did it. And then I would ask myself, I just naturally started to ask myself, what is it that actually frustrates me about what he's doing? And then I realized that all I need to do is change that in me. Now, you think, well, how do you do that? Because as soon as you see a behavior in your child and you realize that that child is reflecting your behavior, then the natural thing for you to do is feel guilty for that and start blaming yourself and think, how do I do this? That is not how higher intelligence works. Higher intelligence works by you seeing it and then think, is that what it is? Don't blame yourself because you didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. Then allow that change in myself, and that's what you do. You allow it. You don't try and push it.
You're extending your awareness. Some people will say expanding consciousness, but that's like an academic thing to a lot of people. They don't know what that is, but just becoming aware of something that you weren't aware before. That's exactly what it's all about, and that's life.
Yeah, just to take a step, moving toward natural law here.
Yeah.
Right? Because when I allowed that change to come in me, and you don't give it resistance, you give it resistance and it won't work. Allow the change to come, and the most amazing thing that happens is that child automatically reflects it back. You don't even need to say a word. You don't need to do anything except allow the change to come in you. Isn't that just absolutely amazing?
That's one of the presuppositions in neurolinguistic programming. You don't change other people, you change your response to them.
Now my son is 25, and still he's my teacher.
Yep.
Still, if there's something in him that I'm not completely comfortable with, I allow that change in myself. I see it first, because I can't see it, you can't change it. I allow that change in myself, and even now, he still reflects that back to me. Isn't that beautiful? They say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You see a parent and you see a child. You see a behavior pattern in the child, and you're more than likely going to see it in the parent. The biggest thing that I'm doing on this tour, and what I want us to do, is say to everybody, please start taking responsibility for the influence that you have over your children and for those around you, because you have enormous responsibility and power over them. And just this awareness of the power and the influence you have will change both your life and their life forever.
And the game will help that happen.
The game, you don't have to play the game, even just being aware, but the game significantly helps you understand and appreciate the benefits of that.
It gives you all the tools a parent would love to have. What can I do to entertain my children? I mean, I've asked myself this question thousands of times, Len. If I had had the game, what I know of it now, then I would have never have bought all those video films. I wouldn't have turned on the television. I wouldn't have pacified. I wouldn't have put games in front of them that were stupid, but games that make you intelligent. And that's an intelligent choice. I think every parent would like to have that choice.
This is quality time.
That's quality time.
This is quality time.
You know, there's another thing to be aware of. In this whole process of learning about the game and what it does and how the influence it has on human behavior and the attitude and all that sort of stuff, I've discovered that actually computer games are good for you.
Yes, absolutely. There is nothing that is entirely bad in life.
No, as long as there's a balance. If there's not a balance, something's wrong. Like, if the child wants to play these computer games, I say let them play them.
Computer games can teach children focus.
It teaches them a lot of things.
Of course.
A lot of things. However, they must have the balance.
Yep.
And if they don't have it, then there's going to be trouble.
But you're talking about the connections between people, physical connections.
Absolutely.
And
the human interaction.
You want
That's
to
the room between the boxes.
Computer game.
Sorry?
You want to achieve that.
No, you won't. But there's no use us fighting kids playing computer games, because there are some. It's scientifically proven now, and if you need to, I can get the details of the woman who's done her PhD in games.
Well, I know games help mental acuity. I've learned it myself.
Absolutely. However, if that's all you do, then there's a problem.
Yeah, but the show we had yesterday in Norwegian, you told us about this bully in the classroom. If there were some bullies and they started playing this game, there were amazing changes in the classroom.
It was a whole collection of inappropriate behaviour. These kids, not only some of them were bullies, but they were on detention like all the time. And basically what happened is, after 5 weeks of only playing an hour a week, the teacher told me that nearly all of these kids were no longer on detention, and if they ever were, they could now discuss what the problem was with the children, because they couldn't, when they were on detention before, the children would not communicate with them. They couldn't get any sense out of them. So they said these children who were disruptive, who were bullies, who were everything else, in the teacher's very words, said they have actually become an absolute pleasure to teach. That's the transformation that people go through. And adults, all you need to do is let the child come out and play, not be childish, be childlike.
This is something for you, Brian, in where you belong, because I heard the schools over there are quite rough.
Well, it all depends where you are, but they can be. They've been so simplified and regimented that, they could use something like this most definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure. How about that?
But Len, I have a question. Do you notice any kind of market difference in doing this with younger minds as opposed to older minds, or do you find that it's all up to the individual?
I had my young son, 4 years of age. I'd get him to put a blindfold on, rub his ears, and we was the 6 of us in the room, counting to 10. And as he counted to 10, we located ourselves around the room, and then he was to ask the little boy inside of him, where are they all? And he could point to every single one of us, and he did it consistently. And then we'd play a game called Sleeping Pirate, where you would put a blindfold on and you'd have an item between your feet, a bottle normally. And people from the other side of the room would take turns to try and creep up and take the bottle from between your feet before you clapped and you pointed to them to put them out. I thought that young children were amazingly good at that. But then, some years ago, an 82-year-old woman came to do my workshops. And she came in on a frame, and she had hearing aids in both ears. And it was a 4-part workshop. And at the beginning of the 4th part, she was not using the frame, and she was not using her hearing aids. We sat her down to play, because she was chosen to be it. We sat her down to play Sleeping Pirate, and she said to me, Len, I can't hear. And I said, that's it. I don't want you to hear. I want you to hear. She did as well as my 4-year-old son. So my feeling is that we never lose it, Brian. We never lose it.
That may be why everyone should be thinking of themselves as a child of creation, maybe? Could be.
Well, I just think that everybody should be, when I started this game, every time I introduced it to somebody, they would be saying, oh, I know such and such who could benefit from this. I know this person would love this. And now I'm saying, just focus on yourself for now, because if you really want to change the world, just focus on you and your sphere of influence, be it your family, in your classroom, and everything else. And if you do that, that's all you need to do to make a difference. Yeah. And I guess I'm pretty passionate about this. I think I'd like humanity to wake up, because we're bloody asleep as a race. We're doing all these stupid things to each other. and it's just, and not only to the environment. We're doing things that we do not need to do. We don't need to work so hard. We don't need to be under so much stress. Our kids can live balanced lives. We can live balanced lives. So yeah, it's a bit of a passion.
Well, with the children, what age do you find there's a difference? Say, well, let me ask you first. How young have they been? What's the youngest group you've ever done this with?
The youngest person I've ever done it with is 4, but the youngest group I've ever done it with is grade 1s at school, and they were 6 and 7. Now I am going to develop a junior version of it, which I do not have as yet, because I'd like to get them to start playing it at 2 or 3, because then I think we'll see some remarkable things happen. But at the moment, the structure of the game is suitable for 4 over.
And how rapid was the response at those ages?
Remarkable. Honestly, young children are just remarkable. It's like when you're playing some of these games, you have to slow right down to help the children, the 4-year-old, to understand what's actually going on. And you, like in a word game, you say, give me a word with b, and they'll come up with something. Then it's just one of the word games. And when you first started, it's so slow, but you just need to be a bit patient. And then the next time they're doing it faster, and the next time it's like, wow, how did they get that so quick? And then once they pick up the essence of the game, watch out, because they're just amazing. They're just incredible.
The child's mind is so plastic.
Yes.
It's amazing. And if you can turn on those sensory awareness channels at an early age and keep them there and keep those children in that safe space where they can explore and become really safe from the inside out, that's when you really laid a good foundation.
Oh, well, absolutely. And one great thing as a parent and playing this game, you may have a child that you think's off the rails, or you may have the kids aren't cooperating and they aren't getting along, they aren't listening. You start playing this game with them and follow the rules, keep it safe, create the safe environment, and you can use the games to adjust their behavior to an appropriate level of playing. And they adjust remarkably quick. And
it's usually just not the children that's off the rails. I've always found that it's the adults that are off the rails that have made children that are off the rails.
Well, to support that, Mike, when I was in Perth, we within 12 months had it in to around 150 schools. It was all word of mouth, no advertising. And one teacher told another teacher, and the school psychologist in particular, they noticed the changes in the behaviour, in particular with the children with ADHD and ADD. And they, I've lost where I was.
Children's behavior, adults changing.
The opportunity to adjust the behaviour, and these children, like just in the normal family environment, as long as the children are feeling loved, you can adjust a child's behaviour in weeks.
Oh yes.
Honestly, it's really quick. Once they feel like they've been heard, that's the biggest thing.
Safe, respected, heard, acknowledged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to take a little break now.
Sure.
We're on the top of the hour, and we'll continue with this because I think